Charleston County Council. First order of business is our prayer from Mr. Darby.
If you don't find it sacrilegious to bow your heads, Holy Providence, thank you for the blessings of life. Continue to bless as this council seeks to help all, particularly in our endeavors of helping the poor. This blessing we ask in his name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Pryor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, Freedom of Information Act.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to news media and persons requesting notification.
Thank you. Next item, minutes of August 22nd and August 29th.
For approval. Second.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Recognitions and resolutions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Reverend Middleton, seconded by Mr. Pryor, I believe, and thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to recognize Disabilities Board Director Evelyn Turner. Can you come forward? Yeah, right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A resolution of Charleston County Council proclaiming the week of September 10th, 2023 as National Direct Support Professionals Week. Whereas the direct support professionals, including direct care workers, personal assistants, personal attendants, in-home support workers, and paraprofessionals are key to providing publicly funded long-term support and services for millions of individuals with disabilities. And whereas direct support professionals arrive for work every day, ready to do everything they can to ensure the health and safety of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism. And whereas direct support professionals provide essential support that ensures all individuals with disabilities are included as a valued part of their community, supported at home, at work, and in the communities of the United States, and empowered to live with the dignity that all people of the United States deserve. And whereas direct support professionals ensure that individuals with disabilities thrive through connections to their families, friends, and communities, thereby avoiding more costly institutional care. And whereas direct support professionals build close, respectful, and trusting relationships with individuals with disabilities and provide a broad range of individualized support to include people helping people learn to make person-centered choices that lead to meaningful and productive lives. Now therefore be it resolved that Charleston County Council does hereby proclaim the week of September 10th, 2023 as National Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week in Charleston County, and recognizes the dedication and vital role of support professionals in enhancing the lives of individuals with disabilities of all ages, appreciates the contributions of direct support professionals in supporting individuals with disabilities and their families, and commends direct support professionals for being integral to the provision of long-term support and services for individuals with disabilities. Charleston County Council, Herbert R. Sass III, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Do you have anyone here you want to bring down and to be recognized?
I do not.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to say?
I would just like to thank all council members for your support. Thank you so much for recognizing our direct support staff. They are the backbone and the heart of our organization. They are our boots on the ground. They are the ones day in, day out, taking care of people with intellectual disabilities and special needs, and they deserve to be recognized. So I really do appreciate your time and your attention and your support of our organization, not only with this proclamation, but also with your support of the building and the services that you provide to us, and also the resources as well. So we appreciate that very much.
Well, we appreciate you and your staff doing an incredible job. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay, I am going to disband our county council meeting for a short period of time so that we can have our public comments.
All right, we have 15 people signed up. The first person is Anthony G. Bryant, followed by Lynn Mazzell.
Let me remind everyone right here that during this 2-minute period of time that everyone gets to speak, council members are not allowed to engage in discussion during public comments. And public comments can also be submitted via email to the county, which we get plenty of them that way too. But if y'all would give your comments, and council members, if you have questions, you can go talk to them after they've spoken. But in order to move the public comments along and so everybody gets their 2 minutes to speak, we're going to follow the directions on this. Thank you very much. Mr. Bryant?
I'm going to give this young lady here a chance to speak before I do.
Pardon me?
She'll speak before I speak. I'm giving her a chance.
She's going to speak in place of you?
No, she's going to speak for herself, but she's going to take my space. Do I have to do it that way or after?
You're the one that signed up.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay. Okay. Anthony G. Bryant, President Bryant Group, Inc. I want to be clear that Senior Judge Brian Harwell referred my civil case as a pro se litigant in protest in terms of land use, in terms of costs on the federal level, and reassigned it to Columbia, Orangeburg, Aiken, and Rock Hill. I don't reside there. And there's only 2 reasons why you can do that. And you can only do it for a misdemeanor or a criminal case. I'm built for wherever comes my way, as you know. So at the end of the day, my deep concern is whether or not those areas are operating in good faith in terms of the judicial system and the cost-benefit analysis to people in land use issues throughout this country and out the state. That's why I do what I do. It's in the public interest to do it. And I don't believe that you have the resources to help deal with those issues. Your people actually represent the county. Well, we're raising money for those who need lawyers, who need the help to defend their property against you. So the real question becomes, will there be some type of attorney general opinions being issued out? What will happen to help the so-called poor and disenfranchised that you create with your zoning that you've done for the past 20 and 30 years, which I'm very aware of? So land use policies that really doesn't deal with financial hardships at all. You know it and I know it. Basically, you do the zoning, you run the roads, and we deal with the problems. So that's why I did what I did. Now Joe Dawson actually is the attorney at record in terms of my protest. I look forward to hearing from his staff, his people in the clerk's office in terms of my position on the issue. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Lynn Mazzell and then Fred Brown Jr.
First off, I'd like to let y'all know, the time before last at the meeting, y'all told me I had to speak to Jim Armstrong. I spoke to him for a couple of seconds. He told me he would call me the next day. Jim Armstrong called me the following day. He said, Mrs. Mazzell, we've done all we're going to do for you. So we still have our ditches full of debris. We have vegetation. Some of it as tall as our stop sign. We are a county road. The county dug our ditch on our road, and we keep begging for mosquito control to come out. We were skipped the last time they were supposed to put us on there, and when they come in, zip out. They don't even come all the way down our road. I was told more than once that we had a different breed of mosquitoes on our road by Nikki at Charleston. And then another question for y'all. If y'all have any questions about where your employees are hiding in Ravenel, please feel free to call me. Then I'd like to know, are Charleston County vehicles supposed to be parked in the handicap spaces? They have refused to clean our ditches in the county that Charleston County dug, but yet Charleston County was over there off of Highway 7 behind the Mexican restaurant cleaning a state ditch. Need pictures? Let me know. I got those also. And I have a good question for you guys. The rodeo. Who pays for the rodeo? Is it our tax money paying for the rodeo? And who pays for when they go out of town to the motel rooms? What, are they all clocking out to do this here, practicing for the rodeo? I mean, we really would like to know why our money's being used for a rodeo, but yet y'all can't fix our road. My road is always a wreck. My ditches are always flooding. We have a drop off from pavement, but go to OS1. where the rodeo champ lives, perfect road, perfect ditch. Can anybody answer why that? 3 miles from my house. It's ridiculous out there, it really is.
Thank you,
Fred
ma'am.
Brown Jr., Dolores Alston.
Evening. Fred Brown Jr., 2946 North Highway 17, Mount Pleasant. I have a few requests in honor regards some paperwork that I turned into all the council members regarding the commercial that's going to be taking place on 17 and 41. I spoke to Mr. Sass about it 7 times, and I also object to that proposal for several reasons, mainly because the oath being taken by you all was to be taking my health, my safety, and my welfare. That's not being done. Now, the experience I'm having with the neighbor, the business next door, there's no condition there. There's no regulation there. He does what he wants on his property, as he says. But at the same time, I'm going to court for a restraining order for just reporting things that he's not doing. He has 2 pages written unpermitted works. I'm reporting this. Why am I going to court behind something I'm reporting to you all? Because of his disbehavior. Here again, the judge asked us to settle the matter. I went to have a meeting with him and his attorney to settle the matter. This is my proposal, that I agreed to settle the matter. I wouldn't bother you all about his unpermitted work. Here's his settlement on what he's agreed. Put earphones in your ear, move your bedroom, sell your property. This is what he's agreeing upon. No regulations being placed on these businesses that you're putting near residents that's in these communities. Here again, false accusations. He's making defamatory statements against me and my neighbors. And this is a witness that he's saying things against me that's actually untrue. Again, my psychiatrist has already written a letter to Mr. Walter S'mores stating that it's harmful for the effect that he's bring upon myself and my residents where I have my livabilities at. Nothing is being done by the council members and them to protect my health, my safety. Here again, my psychiatrist writes a letter also to the Judge Lynn when we went to court.
Dolores Alston, then Charles Glover.
Good afternoon. Is this comment regarding my agenda project or just a public comment?
This is public comment for all kinds of items. For
number 4 also?
Yeah, we will have public comment for these hearings, right?
Right, we'll have public hearing for those, but her item is this one,
Right,
and so there won't be any other
right. There is no.
opportunity for her to
You're
speak.
right. You're correct. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I came before you, excuse me to take this mask off. I came before you today just to request the 12 acres tract of land remain deeded to the Community Life Enrichment Center project. Another important factor came just 3 weeks ago. I had no idea that I could have received state funds. And if I did, I would have done that last year, right after I left this meeting. I found out from the mayor of Hollywood, Mayor Murray, the former South Carolina State representative in our district. I had no idea. Council, I had no idea. Because if I had any idea, I would have had my money. I would have had my money. I would have beat up I-26 to get my money from the state. But I had no idea. None. But now that I know, I'm going to get my money. I'm going to get it. I've had a few phone calls from yesterday up until today from the South Carolina Black Caucus telling me and asking me to come before you today to ask you to let the 12 acres tract of land be deeded to me and the company, and they will make sure that my money could go through the general sessions when it starts in January. And that's all I could ask. I can't do no more. I'm just now learning this today, 3 weeks ago, about the money. And it took another mayor to tell me that. It is so disturbing. Nobody told me that I could have gotten state money. Nobody. And it's heartbreaking for my own counsel at that time that didn't even tell me that. But now
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Charles Glover, then George Freeman.
Good evening. I just wanted to add a little bit to this. Basically, we know we went through a pandemic. I'm sure things are going to get setback. There are going to be setbacks. And that's something that you all need to understand, because I knew you all had setbacks during the pandemic time and during the change of presidents. Sure, the funding was being in the process of getting for the project, because everybody understands and everybody on county council knows that this is a three-phase project. You got the senior citizen building, you got the rec center, and then you got a 10,000 seat or 20,000 seat atrium that's in this project. It's a three-phase project. And this is something that is pretty much needed in the town of Ravenel. Why? Because Charleston is so congested. North Charleston is so congested. So why is it that every time that there's a black person that comes up with something, there's always a problem of hindrance, even with the mayor? I know that you got councilmen that's in cahoots with the mayor. I know even my own representative, Boykin. I just spoke to him about it. You represent our district, but I'm only going to do what I have to do for the time being. If I don't need to be here, then you don't have to elect me back. Okay, if you don't want to be the councilman over District 8, well, you can pack your bag and leave now, because we don't need you. We don't need nobody that's not going to help our people out in the Sea Island areas. If you have to help, help. If you're not going to help, pack your bag and leave. I'm just straight off the handle. That's just it. That's just me. Because we can do bad all by ourselves. You are a councilman. You were elected to serve our district. If you can't serve the district, then dish yourself out. That's enough of this. Y'all spend millions of dollars in Mount Pleasant. This is not the first rodeo here. Matter of fact, billions of dollars since the last time I've been in county council meeting. But still, somebody's trying to do something. A black project is coming up. Everybody want to put their foot on the person. Yeah, I know, Moody, I know Sassy, y'all probably dealt with the mayor in Ravenel. I frankly, I don't care. Ravenel is my home. And that's a fact. I know how it goes. Every time a black person want to do something, the mayor stepped their foot on them. And that's enough of that. It is enough. If we got to start boycotting and get some justice in our community and in the town of Ravenel, that's what we will do. Boycott, if you want to help, help. If you're not going to help, pack your bags and leave.
Thank you, Mr. Glover.
Simple as that.
Thank you.
I know I do have a right to stand here too.
George
You have
Freeman.
rights. If you want to lock me up, do that. But guess what? You have the Black Caucus up in here. I promise you that. I'm not the one.
Well, thank you, sir.
George Freeman, followed by Jeanette Lee.
Good evening. George Freeman, 1450 Bowman Road, president of the Cage Organization. I stand before you here today because years ago, neighbors in the 7 Mile community made a big sacrifice for everyone in Mount Pleasant. They allowed commercial zoning in their neighborhood because it was suggested to them that if they allowed commercial zoning in their neighborhood where businesses could be built right in their neighborhood, people would not have to drive a long distance to get around to get to certain things in the community. So they allowed that to happen. They're sacrificed for the many, but now they are being punished for the few. That does not make sense to me. There is a way out of this, and Mr. Pryor suggested it. I would hope all of you would look at that suggestion and not make this rezoning. It is not about the person who has the property there. We are here because we are concerned about the commercial zoning. If that property is zoned commercial, we don't care who owns it. If they, whatever they want to put there, they will be able to do it, and the community will not have any voice because it will be zoned commercial, and they'll be able to put whatever they want by right. And that is the reason why we are here today. We do not feel a community should be punished for being good citizens. One person should not be able to come into a neighborhood and get to do whatever he feels like doing. I'm quite sure none of you would not want me to move in your neighborhood and do what I want to do in your neighborhood. So I am pleading with you, take the is in the deep consideration and accept Mr. Pryor's solution to this problem and let everybody live in peace. Thank you.
Jeanette Lee, followed by Luann Rosenwig.
I'm Jeanette Lee. I live at 2623 Lennon Lane, Mount Pleasant, and I could attest to everything that Mr. Freeman said. And all I would like to say to you all, God is not making any more land. So please do not think about rezoning to heavy commercial. Light commercial we could live with, and the heavy commercial will be going right next to the individual's home. Most of them are elderly now. Let these people remain in peace and always take into consideration, you don't want this to happen to you. You don't want anyone to put no heavy commercial next to your property that you work so hard for. And remember, God is not making any more land.
Thank you, ma'am.
Leanne Rosenwig, Jane Hirsch.
Luann Rosenzweig, 365 Sugarcane Way, Mount Pleasant. I'm in Councilman Sass's district. I'm here tonight to talk about affordable housing, and before I start, I would like to ask anyone in this room, including council, who would like or who desires to have affordable housing in our community to please stand. Yeah, should be. Thank you. I applaud Council's decision to implement the Housing Our Future plan. The first priority of this plan is to establish an affordable housing trust fund, and it's my hope that that will be done before the end of the year. I do have some questions, though, as well as some of you may have. Question one, did the Housing Steering Committee provide a working definition of affordable housing trust fund? If so, what is it, and will it be used? If the steering committee did not provide details about a trust fund, when will council do so? The Measure Act allows for the creation of local and regional affordable housing trust funds. What is your understanding of this act? What are the benefits and limitations to setting up a trust fund under this act? And what vehicle would leverage the most money for affordable housing? Greenville and Beaufort have both set up successful housing trust funds. How were they set up? How were they set up under the Measure Act? To me, getting clarification on these questions would facilitate implementation of the Housing Our Future plan. Since the initiatives of the plan are contingent upon a reliable source of funding, of gap funding, trust fund should be our first step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane Hirsch, and then Susan Fender.
Good evening, Council. Jan Hirsch. I'm a member of Kahal Kadosh Beth Elohim and the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. I will keep my comments brief this evening because I realize that progress takes time, but time is of the essence. We know that there is a time clock on the American Rescue Plan Act funding, and it has to be allocated by December 31st of next year and spent by December 31st of 2026. Systems take time to put in place, but not every system needs to be created from scratch. There are affordable housing trust funds in Greenville and Beaufort that were created with the help of the South Carolina Community Loan Fund. So it stands to reason that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for Charleston County should have a good precedent to pull from in getting established. CAJM is asking that the public have the opportunity to understand the details that are being considered for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the amount of funding that will come from the accommodations tax before it goes to a vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Susan Fender, Becky Van Wee.
Hello, my name is Susan Fender. I live in District 9, and Councilwoman Honeycutt represents me. I'm a member of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. I've been a nurse for 51 years. I'm retired now, but I spent a large part of my career outside of the hospital in the community. Alongside other agencies, we sought to address barriers to improve health and lives. What we came to realize was that there was little positive change without one thing in place first, and that was safe, affordable housing. Without that, there were few changes in health or school performance. Violence and addictions flourish. And it's not just occurring in poor communities. This is also increasingly true for people with higher incomes facing affordable housing shortages. In May, there was hope when County Council adopted the Housing Our Future plan, and the Housing Trust Fund was the top priority. At that time, the Post and Courier reported, the 9 council members have asked county staffers to spend the next 2 months coming up with concrete steps to carry out their priorities. It has now been over 2 months, and the public is anxious to see those concrete steps. Passage of the ordinance necessary to establish the housing fund is vital. CAJM is a knowledgeable resource that I hope that you will use. In particular, the public wants to know what additional sources of ongoing funding have been identified, and if vulnerable populations making less than 80% will be given priority. The public fully expects there'll be an opportunity to know the specifics before it's voted on. I do not exaggerate when I say that people are desperate for affordable housing. They are watching and waiting.
Thank you.
Becky Van Wee, Edward Green.
Good evening. My name is Becky Van Wee. I live at 270 North Shellmore Boulevard in Mount Pleasant in District 1, and Mr. Sass is my representative. I'm a member of Circular Congregational Church and the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. As you know, on May 23rd of this year, County Council adopted the Housing Our Future plan, as recommended by the appointed steering committee and the consultants from Development Strategies. The plan's very first chapter states that community partners and county residents' participation will be essential in many areas. In fact, it says on page 7, quote, nonprofit organizations, mission-oriented lenders, housing authorities, municipal governments, advocacy groups, and developers can play various roles in program design, administration, and advocacy around state legislative changes and local policy development. As a county resident and a concerned citizen, I hope that you all will vote on the specifics of implementing parts of the plan. And I hope that the public will be able to have an understanding of implementing parts of the plan before you take that vote. For example, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was listed as the top priority for the plan, but the public has not yet been told what the target AMI will be or even how much funding will be dedicated, to this fund. We appreciate your diligence, and we know that we all have the same goal of doing our best to bring this housing crisis under control. So, share with the public the details of the establishment of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edward Green, Kevin Hattigan.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Edward Green. I live at 1115 Seaside Lane on the lovely James Island. My comment now concerning Highway 30. Highway 30 and at Foley Road. And if you look to your left on the Foley Road, you see high vegetation on the side of the highway. It's a disgrace that you're letting that grow up the way it is. If you take 526 leading into Savannah Highway, you see they keep that cut down nice and smoothly. Now, if we're going to live on the lovely James Island,
We don't want that vegetary on Highway 30, that end of Folly, to be grown up to a woods. We would appreciate if you cut those down level like y'all got on Highway 526. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Kevin Hadigan, Adam Friend.
Good evening, council members. Thank you again for your time. I know it's very valuable away from your family, and I appreciate the last council meeting we had. Again, I stand before you, been operating my business since 2009. I serve the community. I have done multiple projects and will continue to do that type of work. If there's any questions, I am here, and I won't take up any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Adam Friend, Clinton McPherson.
Good evening. Adam Friend, 448 Woodland Shores Road on the beautiful James Island. Somebody mentioned that. I'm here as a follow-up. I know I came last meeting to remind you guys that a road that I live on, Woodland Shores Road, is a very dangerous road. I think I told you that I'm here more as a father. I brought my daughter last meeting, if you recall. The school system has told me that we're not going to be making an exception, so they're going to have her walk 10 houses down that road, having to straddle the road and a ditch, 4 or 5 deep. So they're going to walk in the street. So I'm here a month later to tell you that, my daughter and another girl are still having to traverse that road where we know we had a 30-year-old woman get hit and almost killed back in June. I think that's been very clear to you guys. And I just want you to remember that, we all live wherever we live, and your representative, I know Jenny she's working to make some progress with what I'm hoping to get done, but, that road needs to be slowed down. We've got way too many cars going down that road, and again, I'm a month into having my daughter have to do this every day, there and back. I try to take her when I can, but, a lot of parents work and can't do it that way, so. Time is of the essence. I know you do your study that you guys are doing to get the data, but it's a county road. You guys have a lot more control over county roads than I think you give yourself credit for. SCDOT has their rules. They're nice, I guess, to look at and try to reference. But I want that road with 3 requests. Either slow it down to 25 so we can get speed bumps, or allow an exception and put speed bumps. We need a stop sign in the middle of that road so that we can have that road break down from its cut through. And we need to get a left-hand turn lane on Maybank Highway so that we don't end up like Jen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Clinton McPherson.
Good evening, Councilman Sass and council members. Reverend Clinton McPherson, pastor of Greater Goodwill in the 7 Mile community of Mount Pleasant. Stand before you today. We are against the current possibility of rezoning from commercial light to commercial heavy. Highway 17 sees well over 50,000 cars per day. Additional businesses would mean additional traffic, additional 18-wheelers, additional fuel trucks. We are concerned about pedestrians. Several members of my church walk to and from church, having to navigate across Highway 17. There are still children that get on and off the bus on busy Highway 17. And a rezone would mean additional traffic, additional concerns, additional dangers. And so we would like these things to be taken into consideration. But again, we stand and declare that we are against the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public.
Thank you. Next up, public hearings, Folly Beach Election Authority.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Regarding an ordinance approving and accepting the complete transfer of authority to conduct municipal elections for the city of Folly Beach to the Charleston County Board of Elections and Voter Registration.
No speakers.
No speakers for that one? Okay, thank you. Multi-county park amendments.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing at 6:30 PM on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, before final approval by the council of an ordinance to provide for the reimbursement of allocations of revenue under the agreement for development of a joint county industrial park by and between Charleston County and Colleton County.
No speakers.
No speakers?
Mr. Sass, I think there's a speaker. I'm not sure.
Yes, I think I heard the chairman say that concludes public comments.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think some other folks wanted to have some other public comments made. We signed up.
You did sign up?
Yes, sir.
They may have signed up on the public hearings.
Oh.
I think there's several other folks that signed up also.
If you signed up for one of the public hearings, that's what we're going through right now. And so when we get to that public hearing in particular, we'll call your name on that one. Yes, sir.
Thank you. There were none on that one?
No.
Okay. Historic preservation amendments, ordinances with one public hearing, 3 ordinances with 1 public hearing.
Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing regarding historic preservation amendments at 6:30 PM on September 12th, 2023.
Good evening. Tonight I will be giving a brief presentation regarding proposed amendments to the Historic Preservation Ordinance, as well as related ZLDR and fee ordinance amendments. First, I want to briefly discuss how we got to where we are today in terms of historic preservation regulation at the county. In April of 2014, the Planning Commission established the Historic Preservation Committee to help implement the goals and strategies of the cultural resources element of the comprehensive plan, specifically protecting historic African American communities from inconsistent development and preserving structures that are important to the history of the county to prevent the demolition of significant structures such as the Limehouse produce shed, which was raised in 2013. The Historic Preservation Committee established their own goals, which included updating the county's historic resources survey. This project was completed in 2016 with funding from the State Historic Preservation Office. Additionally, the committee sought to revise the county's historic preservation regulations because at the time, they only provided protections for properties listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The current Historic Preservation Ordinance was created as a result of these efforts. The current Historic Preservation Ordinance was adopted in August of 2018. The ordinance accomplishes the following. First, it sets up a Historic Preservation Commission. Next, it establishes a process to designate historic properties and districts. And lastly, it creates a process where proposed changes to historic properties and districts are reviewed and determined to be appropriate in their historic context. While the Historic Preservation Ordinance is separate from the ZLDR, there is language in the ZLDR that helps to implement the Historic Preservation Ordinance. In Chapter 3, Development Review Procedures, it discusses the notification requirements for applications reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. Chapter 3 also states that when applicable, certificates of historic appropriateness shall be obtained prior to site plan review approval. Chapter 8, Subdivision Regulations, states that certificates of historic appropriateness are required prior to subdivision plat approvals for properties located within 300 feet of historic properties and districts. To date, there have been 3 properties and 3 districts designated as historic at the county level. So the properties include the Hebron Center on Johns Island and St. Mark UME and Bethel AME churches in the Red Top area. Additionally, the Phillips and 10 Mile communities in the East Cooper area, as well as the Beefield community on James Island, have been designated as historic districts. Recently, the Historic Preservation Commission requested guidance on restructuring the approval criteria for certificates of historic appropriateness in order to help guide decision-making. When reviewing the ordinance, the following additional changes were identified and proposed. Remove subdivision plat application approval from the HPC's purview because state law places the authority of subdivision regulation under the powers and duties of the Planning Commission. Update application requirements for all application types. Clarify the process of removing individual properties from historic districts. Create a process for certain certificates of historic appropriateness to be reviewed at the staff level. Update the requirements for demolition and clearing and grubbing requests. Add language regarding emergency permits and ordinary maintenance of property. Require BZA approval prior to HPC review as applicable. Create an opportunity for conceptual plan workshops and encourage community workshops. Remove subdivision plat application approval from the HPC's purview, as stated previously. Clarify the list of exemptions for certificates of historic appropriateness and simplify the approval criteria. Simplify the process for modifications to approve certificates of historic appropriateness. Create a process to amend designated historic properties and districts. To identify contributing resources, area character appraisals, and other supporting documentation. Add posted notice requirements for certain application types. Update the definition section, and clerical amendments were made throughout. In addition to these amendments to the Historic Preservation Ordinance, an amendment to the fee ordinance is proposed in order to include a fee for processing applications to amend historic properties and districts. The following amendments to the ZLDR are also proposed to complement the changes being suggested in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. Within Chapter 3, Development Review Procedures, remove historic preservation applications from Table 3.1.6. Require BZA decisions prior to HPC decisions as applicable, and require site plans to be in an approvable state prior to placement on an HPC agenda. Additionally, in Chapter 8, Subdivision Regulations, remove all references to subdivision plats requiring Certificate of Historic Appropriateness approvals. At the August Planning Commission meeting, the proposed ZLDR amendments received a recommendation of approval. 5 individuals spoke regarding the amendments, 2 of which were in opposition. We also received 36 letters in opposition to the proposed amendments to Chapter 8, Subdivision Regulations. At the August Historic Preservation Commission meeting, the Historic Preservation Ordinance amendments were presented for informational purposes, and 6 individuals spoke in opposition to the proposed changes. Additionally, we received 8 letters in opposition to the proposed amendments regarding subdivision. In advance of today's public hearing, we received an additional 20 letters in opposition to the amendments regarding subdivision, and this meeting was noticed as required. Thank you.
We have 15 people signed up to speak. The first person is Elijah Smalls Jr.
My name is Elijah Smalls. I live at 1660 Highway 41, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29466. I have really just a question. I've been waiting to find out about the changes that's to come to the historic reservation. There's some changes that are changes. I'm not aware of them yet. We're waiting to hear. And when would you be getting this report for the changes? Or have you gotten any? Okay, you're not supposed to speak to it. How do we get questions?
Yes, sir. We'll talk afterwards, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We'll talk afterwards.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Richard Habersham, and then Jerome Vanderhorst.
Yes, my name is Richard Habersham. I live at 2930 at Bennett Charles Road. I'm also the president of the Phillips Community Association. Let me give a little background with the Phillips community. We was recognized by Archive and History as a place of historical value. We were the first in Charleston County to receive our historical designation. Last week, we was placed on the National Historical Register of Historical Places. And in this document, I thought it was a pretty good, strong document, because Archive and History has told us that all your good regulations and your strongest protection comes from the local level, not from the national level or the state. It all comes from the local level. And I know that at times you have to tweak any document. It's all document, living document that have to be tweaked at some time. But what we're looking at is that we want to be a part of any changes when it comes up. You know, we got this document about 3 weeks ago, and I understand the county was working on it for 6 months. You know, it's a little hard to catch up, you know, in 3 weeks and 6 months. So, you know, like I stated, the strongest regulation comes from this body right here for our community. And, you know, and this document covers basically the settlement community, no other communities. And the only two people that really have a say in this thing is us and the developers. And we want to keep our community. That's all we want. We want, you know, to be like any other community in Charleston County where we can control or have a say-so, not to stop development, but we have a say-so in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerome Vanderhorst, and then Justin Schwiebler.
Now is my time to speak. I'm Jerome Vanderhorst. I live at 1039 Theodore Road, Owendale, South Carolina, 29429. I am a U.S. Army retired veteran. I'm also a retired educator. I came home because this is the best place for me to live. I wanted to live on the land that my ancestors, the Gullah Geechee people, left for me or for my family. We are opposed to the rules that governs the HBC Historical Preservation Committee being taken away, because that's the protection that we have for our people. I recently visited our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. While in Washington, D.C., I had an opportunity to tour the African American Museum. We all know it as the Smithsonian. While there, I did a reflection of how the struggles of what our people went through. And we all know what those struggles were. And one of the things that our people did for me, and I'm a recipient of that because I live on the land right now, is to protect that land. They held on to it. My mother and grandparents didn't have a whole lot of money, but what they did, they held on to the land. And we don't want to see the land be another form of gentrification. We don't want to see the land be people being taxed out and can't afford to live on the property. Because I want it to be for my grandkids and the next generations to come behind me. So with the help of the HBC committee, that's the only protection we have to ensure that our legacy will live on. We all know the here in South Carolina, what she's going through. We're going through this right now. If you take the protection away from our people, that's going to affect the whole Gullah Geechee corridor, not only in 10 Mile, where I live, also in Phillip, where I grew up. So please, we need help. We don't want to see another form of gentrification. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Justin Schweibler, Aaron Minigan.
Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. Thank you, Council, for your attention on this matter. We're disappointed to see these proposed amendments continue to make their rounds through public meetings. Amendments that, if adopted, would mean the assured destruction of Charleston County's most sensitive and historic cultural resources. The Charleston County Preservation Ordinance was written after years of work that followed the completion of the County Historic Resources Survey and identified numerous historic resources throughout the county, but most notably the historic African American communities referred to in the report as settlement communities. These places were and still are significant due to their historic settlement patterns, characteristics of land use, generational ownership, and continuity of cultural practices that continue to this day. The County Preservation Ordinance was revolutionary for its time in that it added protection and oversight in its establishment to protect these resources in a meaningful way, and the ordinance is working as intended. 3 of these communities have been recognized as Charleston County Historic Districts with this council's support. The Phillips community, Beefield, and 10 Mile are the first 3 such districts, with the Phillips community also having been approved to join the National Register of Historic Places, proving that these communities are not just recognized for their importance in our county's landscape, but because their existence and legacy is of national importance. The amendments before you would strip the Historic Preservation Commission and Charleston County as a whole from providing any level of protection to these incredibly important resources and from destruction by developers. These development projects are already in motion and are actively threatening these communities as we speak. The most damaging part of these amendments is that they were drafted with 0 public input or community engagement, not just from land use and preservation organizations, but most importantly, the communities directly impacted by these amendments were not involved at all. This is a total failure of public process, and we ask that this council puts a stop to these proceedings and ask county staff to start over and to make the amendment process transparent, open, and most importantly, inclusive to the historic African American communities and historic districts that it directly impacts. Thank you.
Aaron Minigan, Lizette Grant.
Good evening, Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We are highly supportive of the work of the Historic Preservation Commission as serving as the greatest line of defense in preserving historic communities and preventing inappropriate development from destroying their character. Therefore, we caution against the degree of changes being proposed to the ordinance. In particular, we are not supportive of the removal of subdivision plats from the Commission's approval authority. Historic resource protection for these settlement areas must extend to land use patterns if we are to do justice to their histories. Aspects such as lot size, shape, and density can irreversibly alter these communities and must be considered as part of the effort to preserve historic character. Just this past week, the Phillips community was successfully listed in the National Register of Historic Places due to its unique cultural landscape and how intact its original settlement patterns have remained over time. But the National Register does not offer protections without strong local law. As proposed, these amendments could have detrimental impacts of undermining protections for one of the nation's newest National Register districts and other historically designated resources. We all benefit from living in a place where historic settlement patterns are respected and communities can thrive consistently with the hard-fought victories their ancestors made. But they are under increasing pressure from growth and development, and it's critical to uphold the integrity of the preservation ordinance to defend these significant communities from being eroded. There is great potential for ordinance amendments to bolster the work of the HPC by clarifying their role and giving them better tools. But more time is needed to thoroughly vet these changes with the directly affected residents to ensure the regulations continue to supply meaningful protections and support community preservation goals. Please defer this proposal to allow for an inclusive public process before any vote is taken. Thank you.
Fizette Grant, Myra Richardson.
Good evening. I'm Plachette Grant. I'm president of the Snowden Community Civic Association. And first I'd like to say I am a native of Charleston. I grew up in a settlement community most of my life, starting out at Marysville. And by marriage, I'm now in Snowden, and I guess settlement is what I'm called to work with and service. And as a kid growing up in Charleston, I'm 50 plus now, and it's really, really heart-wrenching to see our communities just continue to dwindle. Our community, Snowden, is in the process of going through historic district, and I don't know, we started about 5 or 6 months ago and just got some changes, these changes 3 weeks ago, so I'm not sure how that works, but hopefully from this statement, I oppose the amendment to be removed, let me put my glasses on, subdivision plat, application approvals for the Historic Preservation Commission, preview and public, and place this authority under the Planning Commission because Section 629.710 of South Carolina State Law, Article A, states that zoning ordinances must be for general purposes of guiding development and ordinance in accordance with existing and future needs and promoting the health, safety, morals, convenience, order, appearance, prosperity, and general wealth. To these ends, zoning ordinances must be made with reasonable consideration of the following purposes where applicable: to protect and preserve scenic, historic, and ecological sensitive areas. Therefore, any consideration for protecting historic areas should remain under the expertise of the Historic Preservation Commission and not the Planning Commission. Again, please consider saving our communities.
Thank you, ma'am.
Myra Richardson and Anthony G. Bryant.
Hello, my name is Myra Richardson. I'm the president of the Hamlin community. I asked this question back when we were dealing with Hungry Neck Boulevard coming through the 4 Mile community. Why does progress always mean the death of a black community? We're a settlement community now, but we used to be donut holes, meaning nothing. And that's the way we've been treated, and it's so disrespectful because we are never at the table when we're discussing what is going to happen to our areas. We're always on the tail end. 6 months you're planning something, and we find out 3 weeks later, and we're before you decide on voting whether you're going to take our protection away from a committee that was set up to protect us. I'm in the Hamlin community now, and it's not infrastructure, it's development. Mount Pleasant has developed everything they can, and what is left is the black communities. And now they're coming before you to get approval to destroy us. Where is our protection? If you're elected to serve and protect us, protect us. When I'm on a call, when I come home and I see orange markings on trees that's on my property and my neighbor's property, and no one has consulted us. And the question is, what's going on? And your statement is, yes, we were trying to figure out what we're going to do with y'all. That's what we received from the waterworks of Mount Pleasant, to develop land next to us. So at this point, when will you protect us? We're tired of being left out of the discussion, and we're demanding that we're put in place where we're able to tell you what we need, what we want.
Anthony G. Bryant, followed by Michael German. Okay, Mr. German, and then Craig Askew.
Good evening, Michael German, 1707 Snowden Road in Snowden Community. I stand here to just echo some of the same things that's already been said. I understand and I understood what was said so far, but the missing link to me is for us to make any progress, we, the people involved, we need to be at that table. And it was said earlier, we're always at the tail end. We always get what someone else has already made decision for us, about us, without us being at the table. There's no need to go any details with that, but what you're doing to us is something that you would never consider for yourself. All we want to do is be treated fairly and have an equal opportunity to give you our input and not input that you think we deserve to have. Again, I think it's a great idea, but the concept and how we go about doing what we need to be done, we must be at the table. Thank you.
Craig Askew, and then Filippo Raviolico.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Craig Askew. I live at 987 Gadsdenville Road in the small town of Owendale, South Carolina. I'm here tonight, this evening, to talk about the HPC. The Historic Preservation Commission ordinance is a key, whether it's to evaluate a single lot, 4 lots, or 10 lots. For historic appropriateness, subdivisions have the potential to quickly change the character and any prevailing pattern of community, especially settlement communities. The Historic Preservation Commission has the ability to evaluate subdivisions for certificate of historic appropriateness and directly ties to several of the Charleston County Comprehensive Plan goals. Now, you guys did a great job, had a lot of foresight in doing the comprehensive plan, and I think did a landmark thing in coming up with the Historic Preservation Commission. I can't think of any other time that black people's property has been thought about in that nature from a county standpoint. Because they do have historic appropriateness. But as has been said several times before this evening, in this attempt to take out some of the strength of the HPC, I don't think it'll work. We need to be at the table. The community members, community leaders need to be at the table to help you guys decide. That's a democratic governance, and that's why we're all here tonight. Again, thank you for the time you've put so far to do this, and I do not want you guys to back up. Give us time to work with the HPC, to work with you guys, to make this ordinance something that works for everyone and not cave to other pressures. These people, we are valuable. Our real estate is valuable.
Thank you, sir.
Filippo Ravalico, and then Faith Rivers James.
Good evening. Filippo Ravalico, 510 Live Oak Drive. I'm Director of Operation with SCALP, South Carolina Environmental Law Project. In addition to the many good reasons that you already heard, and I'm sure more will follow from people who know much more than I do on these matters, I want to touch on how bad already the optics are for the county on this matter. Despite the secrecy of the drafting, 2 slides of bullet points with clerical matters at the end. No wonder Mr. Smalls is asking questions about, can we understand what's going on? So despite the secrecy, it's no secret that those amendments have been worked on under the open threat of litigation from developers. Now, even without looking at the court system is a separate branch of government, they do what they need to do. There's a long paper trail on this matter. And so I want to share a short anecdote. In early 2021, I was for the first time at the 10 Mile Community Center, and there was a lot of other people, community members, organization, and planning staff was there. The community was concerned about the early permitting of a subdivision on the baseball field, the kind of the core parcel of the community. And what planning staff told them, if you need to become an historic district so that you're going to get the protection that county just passed. Fast forward to December 2022, the community has got their act together. They are an historic district. And an application for the historic appropriate certificate is filed by the developer of that property. That was December. Since then, there's the paper trail that I really encourage you to look at through Historic Preservation Commission meetings. There was a Planning Commission appeal yesterday that you should watch. It's very educative. So please, you can make it look it better.
Faith Rivers James. Pearl Askew.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address this council. My name is Faith Rivers James, and I'm the Executive Director of the South Carolina Coastal Conservation League. Our offices are at 131 Spring Street. I'm pleased to be with you. I'm a native of the 4 Mile community, and so pleased to have so many of my church and community members here tonight. So I want you to know that the Coastal Conservation League appreciates Charleston County's commitment to preserving our historic settlement communities. The county's unique historic preservation ordinance not only provides protection for historic buildings, but also for historic low-country communities, including our traditional Gullah Geechee land settlement patterns. Researchers tell us that these settlement patterns have their genesis in the African culture. True to our heritage, these traditional land use patterns continue to be defining characteristics of these historic communities. This is in direct alignment with Charleston County's comprehensive plan. The cultural resources element of that plan clearly states that cultural, historic, and archaeological resources, unique settlement patterns of traditional low-country communities, such as historically African-American communities and family settlements, and traditional activities such as sweetgrass basket making should be preserved and protected from potential negative impacts of growth and development. Accordingly, the county's Historic Preservation Commission has been instrumental in helping to celebrate and to protect the character and culture of historic low-country communities, including these historic places. Since 2018, 3 historic African-American settlement communities have been designated and have worked through the Preservation Commission. These include the Phillips and 10 Mile communities east of the Cooper, as well as the Beefield community on James Island. Additional communities, such as the historic Snowden community, are currently in the process of applying for the designation as well. We hope that you will understand that we need to hear from the community as we are making these changes. We understand your need for clarity and for specificity, and we hope that you will include the community as you make those considerations. Thank you.
Pearl Askew, and then Edward Pinkney.
Good evening. Pearl Askew, 977 Gadsdenville Road, Awadal, South Carolina. All has been said, which is facts from the historical community standpoint. First and foremost, I just want to say we are not against development, but it has to be managed and it has to be done decently and in order. As one speaker just mentioned, on March 20, 2021, our community was desolated. I mean, we saw bulldozers coming in, hundreds of truckloads of topsoil. And we didn't know anything, and we didn't know what to do. Our historical baseball field was being desecrated. And that's why we became applied and took the test to become a historical preservation community or district. We're just asking that we have time to digest this information that's being brought to us today. We just need time to find out how it would affect all of the settlement communities, because that's exactly what will occur. From the Georgetown County line to the Colleton County line, it will affect each and every settlement community and all communities in Charleston County. So I thank you, and I appreciate your time and effort reviewing this with us, the community. Thanks.
Edward Pinkney, and then Fred Smalls.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Edward Pinkney, 3768 Robbie Glover Road, Owendale, South Carolina, 29429. Before I start, I would like everyone who's here in support of a settlement community or from a settlement community to please stand. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come here tonight to fight for the future of all the settlement communities in the Charleston area. What's here before you, in particular, the removal of the subdivision process, would lead to the systematic erosion of every settlement community in the Charleston area. These communities have existed for over 150 years, and this is not a simple amendment to change the one method of protection that they have in Charleston County. Please understand the weight and the gravity of the amendment that you are deciding tonight, and we would ask you to consider us and have us at the table when you make the future amendments to these processes. Thank you.
Fred Smalls. I live at 2959 Elijah Smalls Road. That's in the Phillips community. A few years ago, Charleston County saw the need for and organized a historical commission. The purpose of this commission was to help protect the African American and settlement communities from overdevelopment by large developers and contractors, from annexation by municipalities, and from encroachment issues. The commission was and is good for the settlement communities. By enforcing the established zoning requirements, it deters and hinders large developments coming into our communities. So now, they, the big developers and big business, are requesting to have changes made to the Historical Commission to allow them to continue business as usual. These changes were requested 5 months ago. However, the settlement communities were only made aware of them last month. So we didn't have time to really understand what the changes were. So we oppose that those changes go forward. This commission only affects the settlement commission, only affects the settlement communities. No subdivisions are affected by any divisions made here. So before any changes are made, the people who are affected the most, the African American community, our collective voices should be heard and taken into consideration. We should be a part of the decision-making process. We oppose the changes to the commission.
That was the last one for that public hearing.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. Next is Andell West.
Sorry. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on a request to rezone TMS 205-00-00365 from low-density residential R4 zoning district to the Andell West Plan Development PD 185.
Good evening. This is a request to rezone TMS 205-00-00365 and a portion of 205-00-00356 from the R4 zoning district to the Andell West Commercial Plan Development. Prior to 1999, the subject properties were zoned agricultural general and were rezoned upon the adoption of the ZLDR in 2001 to low-density suburban. The low-density suburban zoning district was renamed to low-density residential, R4, in 2006. In June of 2022, the applicant initially submitted a request to rezone parcel ending in 365 to community commercial, but requested deferral and ultimately withdrew the application with the intent to submit an application for a plan development. The applicant held a workshop following the July 11th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to present their conceptual plan development plan. Later in September of 2022, the applicant submitted a formal PD application. That application was heard at the October 10th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, where the commission voted to recommend disapproval, though the applicant continued to a public hearing at County Council, where the residents voiced many concerns over the proposal. Following that public hearing, the applicant deferred the request several times until requesting to withdraw the application and waive the one-year waiting period, which was approved by County Council. Following that withdrawal, the applicant worked with the community to address concerns and has submitted this updated plan development request, which includes a proposed subdivision plat to a portion of parcel 365. That plot has been reviewed by staff and is in an approvable state pending a rezoning. This is the location of the property within the county. And this is the proposed subdivision plat, which is, like I said, in an approvable state and will be recorded if the rezoning is approved. The new subject property is outlined in red. This is the future land use designation of the subject parcels. It's urban suburban mixed use.
And the subject properties are currently undeveloped and zoned R4, as are properties to the north and south. Properties to the west are within the town of Kiowa Island, zoned plan development, and contain the Freshfields Village development. The subject property has been recently used to accommodate parking for PGA tournament events. The subject properties are located within flood zone AE. This is an aerial view to the north, and just to note, this outline does not include the proposed parcel. And to the south, again, this outline does not include the proposed plat parcel. These are site photos of the subject property and adjacent properties, including Freshfield Village and the property across of Kiowa Island Parkway. This is the proposed conceptual plan showing alignment with the existing Freshfields development and a large stormwater pond to the rear. This chart shows allowed land uses in R4, the current zoning, proposed PD 185, and community commercial for comparison. The proposed PD will allow many commercial uses similar to those allowed in the community commercial district. However, they will not be allowing drive-throughs or many of the light industrial uses that can be allowed in CC. And this chart shows a comparison of the density, intensity, and dimensional standards between R4 and the proposed PD and CC zoning districts. In addition to the proposed changes you saw on the last two slides, the applicant is also proposing 20% of the lot to be open space, a 100-foot type J buffer along Kiowa Island Parkway, in addition to a 10-foot buffer along adjacent R4 properties, and a pedestrian and bike path. The applicant did submit a traffic study done in coordination with the town of Kiowa Island, which recommended a left-hand turn lane onto Kiowa Island Parkway and to monitor the intersection for the future need of a traffic light. Per the ZLDR, plan development application can be approved if it meets 3 criteria. Staff finds that all 3 criteria have been met, and therefore staff recommends approval with the following conditions: to obtain letters of coordination from the St. John's Fire Department and USPS, and to contact staff to have the subdivision plat for the portion of TMS 20500000356 included in the PD recorded within 30 calendar days of third reading approval of the PD. The Planning Commission also recommended approval at their August 14th meeting. At the August 14th Planning Commission meeting, 1 letter in opposition was received for the request, 5 letters in support were received for that request, and the applicant and 3 people spoke in support of the request. No one spoke in opposition. And prior to today's public hearing, 1 letter in support was received for this request, and no letters in opposition were received. And this request was noticed as required.
There's 3 people signed up for this. The first person is Sally Wacklin, followed by Warren Lash.
Good evening. Thank you for having us speak today. My name is Sally Wackham, and I am the community manager for Cacique, which is adjacent to the property being developed. We have been working with Chris Carrata, who's the developer, for the past 8 months or so. We spoke at the last Planning Commission meeting in favor of this. We believe that Chris has followed many, if not all, of the suggested changes to the development, aligning Freshfields to this, adding buffers, et cetera. And therefore, we are very much, the HOA is very much in favor of this development. Thank you.
Warren Lash, and then Chris Carrata.
Good evening. My name is Warren Lash. I live at 256 Grass Garden Lane, Seabrook Island. And I'm here this evening I'm the president of the Cacique Homeowners Association, and we are in full 100% support of this rezoning application. At the same time, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Jenny Honeycutt. In June of 2022, when the initial proposal was made, there was a substantial outcry of opposition. And through Jenny Honeycutt's efforts, she brought all the key players together and kickstarted the negotiations and basically got the system to work as the system should work. Here we are 15 months later, and we have a plan that the entire community is in fully support of, and I really appreciate the rezoning going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Chris Carrata with Riverstone Properties, Richmond, Virginia. We're the owner of the property and also the owner of Keel Island Golf Resort. We're excited that this project is finally moving forward. As you've heard, it has been a long process and a very collaborative one, and I think now everyone is quite happy with the project, and it's going to bring much needed services to the area. And would also like to thank Councilwoman Honeycutt, Councilman Boykin, who we've met with throughout the process and have provided guidance. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is that the last one?
That's it.
Thank you. All right, we are now going to have our Environmental Management Committee meeting chaired by Mr. Moody.
Sass, call this Environmental Management Committee meeting underway. I chair it. Mr. Kabrowski is on this committee. Council members Pryor and Warman also serve on this committee, and Chairman Sass sits on all committees. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes. Second. Thank you, Mr. Warman. Any changes, additions, deletions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 2, Mr. Tootin, we're going to have a department update, I believe, kind of a round-robin department update, and then we will hear from Republic after that. So,
that is correct. Mr. Q?
Here.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I thought it would be appropriate at this time, since we're going to be discussing part of environmental management as far as Republic's relationship, that we gave a quick rundown on the state of environmental management for the last 6 or 7 months. You can just go to the first one if you want. Okay. All right. So I'll go through it quickly. It's been a lot of talking tonight. Beechtree Landfill has passed 5 consecutive DHEC inspections after failing 5 consecutive inspections. So we're on the right path, still room to grow. We had a lot of complaints from haulers going up the landfill, so we rerouted the whole landfill. Instead of going north and east, we went south and west. And it has been acknowledged by a number of the haulers that it's much better now. They're getting in and out a lot better. We're currently, with Smith & Gardner engineers, performing the initial steps to construct cell 6, which has already been approved, and investigating to see if cell 3, the ash monofill that's existing, can be reopened using the ash for road material and creating another MSW cell to extend the life of the landfill. State-of-the-art odor cannons are on their way as a precaution as we move closer to our neighbors to ensure that there'll be no odor complaints and no interaction into their lives with that. The lack of usable dirt has been handled by the Posi Shell product. In the long run, will save us additional truck purchases as well as minimizing airspace usage, and overtime hours and equipment maintenance are improving. Change it, please. Next. I don't know, should there be a hand signal? Okay, MRF. After aggressive actions from county management, the contractor, CRS, who runs the MRF for us, hired a new plant manager, replacing one that was not performing up to our standards, letting several underachieving employees go, bringing on board several contingency contractors to expedite plant repairs and improve parts acquisition. There was a time when if a belt broke down at the MRF, it was closed for like 10 hours, and that's just unacceptable to all of us. Adding a second shift for plant cleaning. Previously, the service was done by the day shift. After finishing their regular duties, the new crew comes in at 4:30. It stays until 11 or 12, till the MRF is cleaned every night by people who do nothing else but clean. Daily production has improved from 6 hours and 45 minutes to 7 hours to 7 hours and 45 minutes, 8 hours. Improvement of an extra hour of production every day, and we're still working on that.
And the facilities is working with MRF crews to address several construction issues that have led to certain issues in the building, and they are being addressed as we speak. We've increased tonnage also at the MRF from brought in a new customer, and we've gone from 400. We've increased the tonnage from 400 tons per day to 500. Convenience centers and compost facilities. Composting is handling 150 to 200. Sorry, didn't look up. Tons per day. McGill is the contractor. The finished product is sold to resellers in the area. Recently purchased new equipment to improve production. Several new employees to replace dismissed employees. They just signed, and it started on September 8th, a new substantial customer called Dr. Earth to start purchasing major amount of the products. We did have a fire at the McGill, at the composting facility on 823. It was located on the untreated pile, the last section. Investigated by DHEC, Charleston County, and the fire department. Still waiting on the fire department report. All others cleared the site. No employee or equipment damage. No property damage. Yeah, go ahead.
What does untreated pile mean? Can you explain what that
Well,
means?
when the raw product comes in, it goes through a number of steps to treat it to make it composting. So what we have is at the very end, before it gets treated, it's just raw product sitting there.
So it's just sitting there
Waiting,
hot.
yeah, but it gets turned and
Okay.
it gets moved into treatment as soon as possible. They're pretty steady with it. Yeah. You want to discuss the fire a little, or you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
okay.
All right. Let's see. Yeah. Bees Ferry HHW site has integrated their paint drop-offs. It used to be just, people would take them if they wanted it, but it ended up being not a very productive spending of our time. So now we use it with the posi shell. We add it to the product. It's allowed. DHEC's fine with it. It solidifies the product, and it's aesthetically more attractive. So it's a good use for the paint. All convenience centers, as well as the landfill and the MRF, will be upgrading security and signage over the next month, involving the council and whomever the necessary parties are. I'm still learning. We will have some suggestions for new signage for the convenience centers to interact, but that'll go through all of you before anything happens. Recycling efforts. Staff provided customer service assistance during the transition period to Republic Service at the county's recycling collection provider, as county's recycling collection provider. Worked through collection challenges with the new vendor as they arose. Staff provided education and outreach to the community to encourage residents to recycle right, including participation in community events, hosting tours at recycling center, presentations to HOA groups, recycling videos, contamination card checks, and social media campaigns. And finally, that's something we're all here to probably discuss, transition to Republic Services created customer service challenges, including vastly increased call volume, large numbers of missed recycled pickups, and decreased customer satisfaction. Staff has worked together with Republic over the past year to largely resolve many of the issues and has observed improvement in Republic Services performances overall, although some issues remain. Excuse me. I will make one last thing, then I'm done, unless you have questions. I wanted to do a comparison year on year, and last year, 2022, in June, there were 1,385 missed picks in the month of June of 2022. In 2023, 854. In July, there were 1,100, and it was 600 in July of this year. And then finally, in August, there were 1,298 missed picks, and there were 594 this year. So there is improvement. There is a lot of room for improvement, but they seem to be moving until, whatever we want to talk about. They seem to be trying to move in the right direction. They're getting a lot of help from us, and there are issues that need to be addressed by you tonight, and I figure you probably will. So
Thank you, Mr. Q. Any questions for our environmental management? Mr. Q, thank you for being here this evening. Who
Okay.
do we have here for Republic?
Okay, over here, Jay DeHaan is the point person that I talk to all the time.
Okay.
He's the one that we meet with every Friday.
Stay nearby if we need to ask you something. I'll be right there. If you have any comments, you certainly give any updates you'd like to give. I know several council members have reached out to me with some questions, so we'd like to talk with you about some of those things. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Good evening, Council. Like you said, my name is J.D. Hahn. I'm the General Manager for Public Services of Charleston. A lot of things that Thomas said is very well true, but, since the last time we came here, we made the commitment the first time that, we were having some issues with getting everything completed every day. Happy to say with the addition of the routes that we added into the mix and the additional trucks and staffing that we've been able to do, we have not had that problem going forward. I mean, pretty much every single day the routes have been being completed. The additional routes have helped tremendously, and you can see that from the routes that are being completed daily and the decrease of the calls coming in and the missed pickups that we have documented as well. As Thomas alluded to, I've got the same data that he spoke to. When we're picking up 91,000 services a week, right? That's what we're doing for Charleston County. You can guess that some things are going to happen, right? I'm not going to say we're perfect. We all know that's not true. But when you look at that, if you look at the average, that's 139 missed pickups per week, compared to the time 12 weeks prior to the December 15th council meeting, there was 337 missed pickups per week. There's a drastic decrease in the call volume that's going to the county as well. That equates to a 99.998% service success rate. Industry average is 99 to 99.5. I bring that up just so you guys can see that, hey, we understand that there's going to be challenges. We have partnered with Thomas and his team to make sure that as issues arise, we jump on them very quickly, right? They can speak to those issues, and as things come up, there are going to be things, as you've seen in the industry. We're dealing with people, right? We're dealing with trucks that break down, and we're dealing with, drivers that either miss things or people that don't put their recycling out. Since the last meeting, we have been able to overstaff drivers and purchase additional trucks to support the continued growth that we spoke to the last time we were here. Charleston County continues to keep growing, and we see that as we're having to add additional carts to routes. We continue to work with our employees to improve on our customer service and minimize the reasons why residents would need to call into the county. This is an ongoing thing that will continue to keep happening, but we have come leaps and bounds from where we started in June of last year. And that's really what I have from an update standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Certainly, all council members are encouraged to ask questions. Do anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to direct to Mr. Hahn? Mr. Pryor.
First of all, thank you for coming. So in these modern days and times, when we first started our recycling program, we had GPS tracking. Why don't y'all have GPS tracking, or what are y'all going to do to remedy that situation so, you can know where a truck at, in real time, and let a customer know why they were missed?
Sure. We do have GPS tracking, and as we went through the negotiations with the county when we first came on, we provided them what that was. Right, we've got GPS tracking in the phones and all of the trucks that shows you where the trucks go with breadcrumbs of where it goes. So we do have GPS to be able to track when drivers have gone up and down roads to that extent.
So with the high numbers of missed pickups, I know you addressed that a few minutes ago, but during the hurricane preparedness, y'all shut down for a day, and we were getting calls from these folks that the recycling bin won't be picked up for 2 weeks because y'all don't work on weekends. But what disturbed me the most is, everybody else worked on the weekend to make things happen. So, what can y'all do in the future to make sure that doesn't happen again? Because, these folks want these cans even in the neighborhoods. All of us have been getting complaints, all these blue cans all around running over. So it seems to me that it should have been something in place that said, okay, this is an emergency. So we don't want another hurricane to come, and then we hear y'all don't work on weekends.
Sure. Hey, good question. At the end of the day, we were not able to work on Saturday. The MRF was closed at 9 o'clock a.m. due to some mitigating instances that they had to take care of. That was communicated to us prior to the hurricane even coming. So there was no way for us to even run Saturday if we could.
So our staff told you the MRF was going to be closed?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
You said our staff told y'all the MRF was going to be closed?
Yes, sir.
So where's that guy? So you need to answer that for us. He says for maintenance. Did y'all tell them that? And why would y'all tell them knowing that these things are going to be on the street for 2 weeks?
Well, we did let everybody know.
No, you didn't let everybody know because council didn't know. And the public didn't know.
back to their next collection day. After anybody on Wednesday, we worked half a day Wednesday, and then we did not work Thursday. So Thursday, the people that were missed on Thursday were going to be picked up on their next day. We didn't put that out.
But from what he is saying, y'all were gonna be closed anyway.
On Saturday, we were closed we had health issues at the Murph building. We needed to bring people to work at the most convenient time for us, and it was not allowed, people were not allowed in the building. We couldn't have the CO people that were spraying, we were taking the oxygen out of the building, so we couldn't have anybody working scales or working inside at all. So we had planned that way in advance. We thought that contractor could cancel it, but the fact he started on Tuesday and he put it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was the day when they actually did the final part of it. And if they had to cancel Saturday and start again, Tuesday was expensive and timely. And so we opened from 9 to 11.
All right, I'm gonna let Steve answer. I got another question too for.
Councilman Pryor, so the MRF did have limited hours on Saturday. We had a rodent infestation that needed to be addressed for the public health of our workers. And so putting that off was really not an option for us to cancel that operation since it had already began. It's been an ongoing issue, and facilities has been great to deal with and helping us try to get, we've got over the hump now. We think we have it under control, and hopefully that infestation will not happen again.
All right, my last question, I had asked staff to get me a number on how many numbers of houses were missed, not just, section, but how many houses. So anybody have any numbers on what was missed during the day we were closed down? Because I know in the contract says when they missed, we were supposed to be compensated for that. So does anybody have a number on how many actual houses were missed? I don't want to know the neighborhood. I want to know how many houses.
I'll let Thomas confirm that, but I believe it was 2,600 on Wednesday and 4,800 on Thursday.
7,100 total, Wednesday afternoon and Thursday.
All right, so how's that going to work? Are we going to be compensated for that 7,100 being missed per the contract?
Compensated, they're going to pick it up.
I understand, but I think we have a clause, Madam Attorney, that since you were working at that if these things are missed, they were supposed to pay so much per miss, right?
Yes, sir. Also, Republic bills by the number of pickups, and so those pickups should not show up on the bill.
All right, so then I need somebody to be watching that this month. 7,100 should be coming off there because I don't want to pay for something that the people didn't get the service. So, Mr. Administrator, would you keep a close eye on that because that money is due back to the taxpayers? All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Worman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DeHaan, I mean, first I had a few questions here that I'd like to get to, but on this subject of the Saturday being sort of the whole issue as to why we couldn't just kind of roll over one day and just get folks sometime before 14 days later, I mean, was there an option to do it the next Saturday? I mean, I'm just saying there's 2 Saturdays between one pickup day and another pickup day. I would just say that I know that folks in my neighborhood certainly would have appreciated getting things done, before this week. So I don't know if that was ever explored. I don't know if there was some other reason there, but I do think, when we have these situations where we have a storm come through, which is not going to be uncommon, we've got to have it buttoned down that we're going to get this stuff out of people's yards sometime closer than 2 weeks. I mean, we've held the standard of basically being at one day for a long time, and so I think that should be the standard. So that's more of a comment. But in any event, you mentioned these routes being completed, and I take it there's some sort of documentation of that. But we've also got these documentations of missed pickups, and I guess how is this disconnect happening where we've got some sort of, I don't know if people are signing off on it, I don't know how that works, but we've got some sort of sign off that yes, these routes are 100% complete, and yet there's whole streets, there's whole neighborhoods getting missed, and we have the issue of whether one person or the whole neighborhood calls. I mean, we can drive down there, so how do we square those two things where we know there's big chunks getting missed and yet we've got 100% completion?
Sure. So in terms of the routes being completed, so we talked about the GPS, drivers checking in when they're done at the end of the day. They give us a call before they head in. We check the route to clear to make sure we can see the tracks going up and down the roads, right? When the drivers come in, they sign off on it. That's where it goes. So I would say that we are not seeing the neighborhoods being missed like we were seeing before. That is not something that we're seeing, and I have not been getting the escalations of anything coming that is part of that. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying that streets aren't missed or cul-de-sacs aren't missed from time to time, and sometimes there's reasons for it. Like we'll send in service recordings with pictures and stuff to the county stating that, hey, there was a service truck parked in front of this cul-de-sac where we could not get in. Right, there are times where that may not be communicated to the resident. I'm not entirely aware of that, but that's kind of our process of making sure that our checks and balances are done. We have the same driver in the same truck in the same route, running the same thing every single time they hit those customers. So it's not like we're sending somebody different every single time and hoping that they get it all picked up. These people have been running these routes for the most part since we got the routes in June.
Okay, well, I guess, but the service truck example that you just gave, it sounds like that's something you would report. So that wouldn't be a situation where you're reporting 100% route completion, would it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the route still, for what we can do, the route is complete, right? We can't move the service truck. So from what we see, and we can't see if a resident doesn't have their can out and they call in and say they do. So that's going to be something that's going to come in afterwards. We're saying that, hey, there's not whole large sections being missed. There's not neighborhoods being missed. The one-offs here and there is something that you're going to have regardless.
Okay. And maybe with respect to those, and I certainly got a few, I've certainly spoken with a number of folks who, in the frustration brought about by the storm and the inability to get out there before this week, I've had a lot of people saying, by the way, I've had this issue and that issue. I can't say necessarily that that's a whole neighborhood issue, so maybe that has died down. We'd have to look back at the records on that. But even with respect to these sort of one-off, one person's can getting missed here and there, it's my understanding we've got this contract that requires those to be corrected within 24 hours of being reported. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's also my understanding that there's a lot of instances where that's not happening. Is that also correct?
I would say there are instances. I wouldn't say a lot. As Thomas was alluding to, if you go back and track, we have these things that are immediates. So the immediates get put into the tower system that comes in from Charleston County. And if you look over the past couple of months, you can see that we've been addressing them within the 24 to 48 hour window. It's not going, a week or anything. There were issues there probably 2 months ago where we had a delay of carts that was from our manufacturer. They did not get us the carts here. So we did have a delay in carts getting out to customers, but not in terms of us getting out and servicing those customers.
Okay. All right. Well, all I can say is there seems to be still a general sense among a lot of my constituents that the level of service that folks are receiving now is not the same level of service they've come to expect. And, this is a customer's always right type industry as far as I'm concerned. So, I'm certainly hoping that we can continue to work together to find ways of tightening up these records and making sure that they're fully matched with what's happening on the ground, because, I got to tell you, I'm pretty concerned about that right now.
Yeah, and then, sir, what I'll say is the way that we can track this, the way that we can see this is through the missed pickups, right? It's through the calls that come into the county. If those are not getting through and those aren't coming in and we're not seeing the misses out on the street, I'm not sure where they're coming from. And that's just me being honest, right? I mean, that's the only barometer we have of the issues that are going on is if customers are calling in and they're calling in missed pickups. And as we spoke to and we can prove to through the tower system that we run with the county, those have all decreased and been drastically decreased since the last time we met.
Well, I guess I would just say to that and have folks think about the fact that, my understanding is we don't have cameras on these trucks. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so obviously, I think we all know the county used to have those cameras, and so that was a really big assurance of making sure that you know, we knew whether this was a situation of someone getting their can out late versus not, versus, you know, whatever the case may be. And so, you know, I do think that both from the contractual relationship side, but also just from a public trust side, we need to look at ways of trying to rebuild that sort of reassurance. And so, you know, I guess that is, haven't been on this council super long, but when I came in, I know that we had a very efficient system. Those calls were few and far between and handled very efficiently, and I felt like very comfortable with it. And I'd like us to try and get back to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Sass first. Let's get him a chance to speak first, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. I know it's a big job. I think you said you pick up 90-something thousand a week.
Yes, sir.
And you're missing how many a week?
Averaging 139.
139. That's a whole lot better. It's gotten a lot better. I'm getting a lot fewer phone calls. I was getting the same phone calls every week, and y'all have managed to pick those up, and I really appreciate that. What I'm really concerned about the most is the next time that we have an interruption, like we have an interruption with a storm or something like that. I mean, the way that we'd had this done in the past is we had 4 days of pickup, and Friday was our spare day to pick up everybody else, or if there was a holiday. So we worked on. We didn't work on Monday. We worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm concerned that we'll have a storm and we'll be out of commission for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden everybody's going to be hearing that their blue can isn't going to get picked up for 2 weeks. I mean, how are we going to resolve that? I mean, that means somebody's going to have to work. I mean, it's not going to be a rodent infestation every week up at the MRF. That means on those Saturdays that we're going to need people to go pick those cans up. And so are we going to be able to do that, or tell me what's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're open to working with the county to try to figure out what we can do to try to mitigate this, right? So at the end of the day, you know, we don't want people going a month by any means for not having service. That is not our intention. Obviously, we couldn't help that a storm came into town, right? Depending on the size of the storm and the scope of the storm, if it's a one-day thing like this last time, or a 1.5 day time, we can work with the county to try to get as many employees that we can to come in on Saturday.
Sure.
As you know, if that's not their normal scheduled day, we can't mandate it, but we'll do everything we can to get everything picked up that we possibly could. But I give you my word that we'll work with Thomas and team to make sure that we get something that's more suitable that they can bring to the council that you guys would be approval of.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a good start. That's what we got to get done. Thank you.
Mr. Pryor.
One last question. What time do y'all start pickup in the morning?
7 o'clock, sir.
All right. Okay, has that been communicated to a lot of the neighbors? Because, you know, some of them may put it out 8 and your truck come at 7.
Sure.
And then they said, oh, they call in, that's and say they are missed. That's why the camera is very important, because that would have been documented. But maybe you might need to do it, y'all might need to do a media blitz to these people and let them know that we coming in at 7, put your can out the night before, so that way nobody can get missed. Because I've seen a lot of that too. You know, you go down the street and 7 o'clock you barely see any cans, and then the truck comes in and, you know, 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock they're out there and say, oh, you missed me. So just a suggestion, maybe you might want to look at, maybe sending out something, or maybe our staff can send out something, you know, in a media blitz saying, hey, look, you know, we asked that you put your can out, you know, the night before so nobody can get missed.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion, and honestly, they have done that. They've put out those communications via Facebook posts and social media to make sure. They'll do reminders, I would say, every couple of months, and just say, hey, please have it out by 7 a.m. or the night before.
And, you know, I'm an old school guy, Facebook and all that. A lot of people don't have that, so I might want to do it as a public service announcement on TV and radio, because a lot of elderly people don't use Facebook.
Understood.
All right. So, thank you.
Mr. Darby.
Mr. Tootin, I gave you the wrong date, sir. My recycling bin has been up for the past 6 weeks, sir. It's still there waiting. And I didn't want to call in to say that, you know, a councilman called in, you have certain privileges and whatnot. I didn't want to, you know, I don't want any preferential treatment or anything like that. But it's been about 6 weeks before, you know, my can is still there. So Thursday coming might be about 7. So I'm just want, hopefully this year it will be picked up. But not only that, there was a minister who called me. Would you please, sir, call? My recycling bin here for months, has not been picked up. I called Mr. Tootin. He immediately jumped on it. The thing that got me to have a videotape, his recycling bin is right here. And his neighbor has one. picked up his and drove by the neighbor's house. And I'm saying, are you serious? So my question, who is checking the checker?
What do you mean who's checking? Who's checking up on the supervisor that's looking?
Yeah, who's checking on the drivers? Who's checking that person?
Yeah, so our supervisors are out on routes. You know, when we get the calls in where we've got people that they're saying, hey, this whole street got missed, before we go ahead and just send a truck to it, we send our supervisor out most times. We've got a couple supervisors and lead drivers that will go out and take a look. Now, like I alluded to before, there are customer service things that we're going to have to continue to keep working through with people. Right. Anytime you're dealing with people, you're going to have things that happen. Right. I can't explain what happened, and I won't try to. But all I can say is, in those situations, we can do continued trainings with our team, because a lot of the people that are working for us were folks that worked for the county prior to, that are running the same routes that they were. So it's not like they're unfamiliar with the county routes. They were the same people that ran the routes then.
Yes, sir. Well, I really don't want any preferential treatment, but would someone please put my address down that I can get my can, please? I'd appreciate it.
Harvey, I got
Yes,
a
sir.
pickup you can put in the back of that. and
Is it a
take
Ford?
Uh-huh.
Is it a Ford truck?
Chevrolet, sir.
Oh, that's all right, sir.
I don't drive Fords.
Mr. Hunt, thank you for being here tonight. I did have a couple of things I wanted to address with you, and maybe a couple of recaps. I agree with Councilman Pryor, I think mentioned the cameras, or maybe it was Councilman Worman, both mentioned those cameras. The GPS, the checking of the checkers, I think is something that's a problem. And I would take issue with one thing you mentioned about some of the misses. There's a neighborhood in Bell Hall entire neighborhood was missed in June and September, and yesterday, 9/11, entire neighborhood was missed. Mixon neighborhood, North Charleston, has been missed in July. Rimley's Point, Drayton on the Ashley was missed in July. These are recent, these aren't, and listen, I want to say I agree with you. The numbers are coming down and getting better. But I would consider June and July recent whiffs on it, not just a one or two Z, but an entire neighborhood. So that's why I think we have trouble with you're saying there's not a problem, but then we know there's a problem because we get the calls. And so then we call Mr. McMillan, we call Mr. Q, and kick their teeth in. And so when we hear you say there's not these wholesale misses, it just doesn't. It's not making sense. It's not coming together. And I think several folks have expressed that. I would like to also mention, I talked with Mr. Thigpen and the attorney. I think our contract with Republic is silent on what we do about storms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I would like you guys, I would assume the majority of this committee would support me in saying that needs to be addressed. Murph being closed withstanding, I don't know that I knew that either, but every municipality had their trash trucks out Friday and Saturday. We didn't have our blue trucks out Friday or Saturday, and that was bad. That's not good. And we've got to fix that going forward with storms, because the municipalities' trash people got a day and a half off. Our vendor got a day and a half off. We got to make that up on Saturday. We got to get that fixed. Making the people that missed wait 2 weeks, it's just unacceptable. And if we've got to go into next week and push those people back to get the people that got missed during the storm, then I'm for that too. So we've just got to figure out a way to get caught up on something like this. So
Sure. Legal is more than happy to work with both the vendor and the staff members just to make sure that we can get provisions in place that align, maybe an amendment to the contract,
And
or
certainly-
something that aligns, or some level of agreement with regards to what will
He's
happen.
mentioned a willingness to work through that, and I agree. And I think
Absolutely.
cameras ought to be in the discussion too, for their protection and ours.
Good point.
We got you on camera because Mr. Darby just showed me that, but that's just one house. So, but I think it makes sense to do that. I'll follow up, Mr. Q, with you as well later. I know we've got some reporting challenges maybe that we've had with Republic, so I don't want to take everybody else's time here, but as chairman of that committee, I'll follow up with you on that to make sure we're getting timely reports back and forth. So, any other questions for Mr. Hahn or Mr. Q? Mr. Pryor.
Just one suggestion, Mr. Chairman, checking the checker. All those subdivisions that you said was missed, I'd like to know how much numbers was individually, because if we paid the bill, then they only get paid for what they pick up. Am I correct, Madam Attorney? So we want to make sure they didn't get paid for what they didn't get picked up.
It's the houses, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want it to be 100 houses, but it got one miss because it's a neighborhood. So, you know what I'm saying? So let's make sure we check the checkers. If we have to, get Mr. Tootin to bring somebody on staff just to be checking the numbers. I'd like to see that happen.
Mr. Werman, let's call it quits after this.
I think Mr. Pryor took the words right out of my mouth. I think we're kind of, I'm just thinking, I know we've had this issue where, one person will call, they'll say my whole street hadn't been picked up, but that counts as one call, or at least I think at one point we were only comfortable counting that as one call. And so, yeah, I mean, it seems to me that it would probably be worth someone's job to be full-time, or maybe even two people to just sort of, and I don't want someone to have to drive across the county all day. Some people might like that, though. But the point is, I do think that having some sort of independent, and, obviously understand it's a contract and understand that they're, Republic, y'all are going to have your own folks too, but I do think having some sort of independent, or not even independent, county arm that is some investment from the county, be it in, having a few trucks. We used to have a couple of trucks lying around when the contract was first implemented, where we could go out and do these pickups and kind of spot check things. Or someone like Mr. Pryor saying, who can check the checkers, as Councilman Darby said as well. So, I think it's not just stuff that we need to talk to our friends at Republic about, but some stuff that we could talk about ourselves to kind of make sure that we're putting in the effort and the investment as well. So,
Well, let me close by saying maybe staff can, when y'all work with Republic on that, maybe you can bring back some creative ideas. We don't want to run afoul of our contract. We don't want to be running into each other either on the same streets. But let's get creative. I don't care how we get the problem solved. If they need help and we've got capacity, let's do it. But anyway, let's get together, Mr. Thigpen, later. You find out. Y'all pull some things together, work with our vendor, and tell me when you want to come back, and we'll have another meeting. Mr. Sass, we're done.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Thank you, Mr. Q. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate y'all talking with us. I'm going to reconvene the county council meeting, and now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Honeycutt.
Thank you. For item 4A, is there a motion? Does everybody understand that 4A is the Community Life Enrichment Center, and the pending motion on the floor, Mr. Darby, I believe was yours? Are you going to withdraw that motion, or?
What was his motion?
I believe it was for an 18-month extension to allow the applicant to come in compliance with the grant for the Community Life Center.
Well, yes, I'd like to have that if you all would please allow this time. I spoke with Ms. Alston, and she told me that she has spoken with the state representative. I also spoke to another state representative today to say that there are dollars, and I think she's just asking for the extension of time. I know she has been here before, but there comes a time when I think government needs to have patience until we have patience no longer. So I would ask that she be given that extension in terms of the 18 months.
Got a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll second the motion, because when I was reading the emails today, I think Representative Lieber had sent something to Mr. Boykin saying that if council defers this and give her the opportunity, he would find funding for her.
Excuse me, Mr. But let me backtrack. This is Mr. Boykin. He needs to articulate this. I don't want to think that I'm crossing lines or whatnot. So I would like to have this done, Mr. Boykin, but again, it's your area. I don't want you to think that I'm coming to yours, but it's something prior to your even ascension to county council, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Darby. I am extremely sympathetic and appreciative of Ms. Alston's efforts. I think they were earnest and it would have been great for the community. I've spoken to her several times. I've spoken to Representative Lever and Mayor Tumbleston. I've also reviewed the county council meeting that preceded this, well over a year ago, to get some background on all this. A couple of things come to mind. When I spoke to Representative Lever, and his email is there for all of y'all to review, he cannot guarantee funding. He can ask. But we all know that that's no guarantee of funding. In fact, this past legislative session, was working on trying to get some state funding for a roundabout at a dangerous intersection on Johns Island. It didn't get funded. So there's no way to know what gets funded, and generally that's always at the end of the session, and it's a fight for those dollars. And so I understand that could be a possible solution, but you can't count on it. And I guess I go back to a couple of things. In reviewing the prior meeting, Ms. Alston stood up here before this body and made a declaration that if she did not obtain the money in that 1 year's time, that she would bring the deed and sign it back over to the county and allow it to be transferred. She made that statement. I would hold her to account to that statement. I've looked at this. I mean, there was a 5-year provision in this original agreement for a reason. Clearly, there were concerns about the ability to raise those funds, and I think it was a very ambitious endeavor, and I wish she could have. Secondly, we've gone 4 years beyond that, and we're at the 9-year mark, and I'm absolutely want to promote community development in my area. And I think it has been an area that has been underserved, without a doubt. But during those 9 years that have lapsed, the town of Ravenel is exploding right now. And 3,000 houses are going there, potentially 4,000 more in the East Edisto project. It's not going to be a small town anymore. My conversation with Mayor Tumbleston was that the town is, they purchased the Molly Hill School 7 years ago. They have revenue, they have income, they have tax base. They are going to redevelop that property. There are 2 buildings. They're looking at, as you saw Mayor Thomas's letter, they're looking at tearing down the large one. They'd have an 8,000 square foot building that they're going to utilize to house their town hall and for other things like a community center and the possibility of being able to build a gymnasium and other facilities on that property to serve that community. In addition, they already have a senior center at their old town hall where the ball fields are, and they've improved that. So when Ms. Alston started down this journey, and it has been a journey, there was an extreme need, and she was great foresight in pursuing it, and I applaud her for it. But over those 9 years, a lot's changed in Ravenel, and I inquired of Mayor Tumbleston particularly. I said, are those amenities, those facilities, only going to be available to residents of the corporate limits of Ravenel? And he said, no, they're for the community, St. Paul's. And the other thing I might bring up is the property in question is actually in the corporate limits of Ravenel. It's in the town that we're talking about. As much as I would love to support another extension, for me, I think this thing has run its course for 9 years. There's no certainty of funding. It could be, but again, I mean, how long do we go year to year? If she doesn't get it this time, we go another year and another year. And that coupled with the improvements and facilities that the town of Ravenel is going to provide anyway, and they do have funding, that are going to be provided to all residents, not just some residents. And I've actually had the pleasure of going to some of what they've already constructed. They've got seniors in there and programs and speakers and music and dancing and everything else. The town is growing, and in fact, Mayor Tumbleston told me that they'll vacate the county building down there, and that may be repurposed to some degree. So, as much as I would like to support this, I don't think that I can, but I would defer to you, Councilmember Darby, to proceed, and if you would like to.
Yes, sir. We can vote it out the way.
So before, Mr. Darby, you want to leave your motion on the table? Is that clear? Okay. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. Mr. Boykin did have a nice summary, but I did want to point out that last year that I was going to make that notification too, of what the owner said, that she would personally bring the deed here and sign it if she didn't have the money. And I think even you, Mr. Darby, or maybe somebody had said that we're going to give you one more year, basically, and if you don't have the money in a year, I'm done. I've done everything I can to help you. There's no money. There's no money here. I asked our Greenbelt folks, we're actually owed about $4,200 from that organization. The first year after the organization bought the land, they have to pay the taxes for the preceding year. They didn't pay the taxes, and so the county staff found that parcel in a tax sale. So we paid the taxes and the fee and the late fees back, or the interest back to the person who had bought the note in the tax sale. And we're still waiting to get paid back that $4,200. So it's just got to go away. It's just got to go away. I don't ever see it getting funded. I think the town of Ravenel has filled the gaps where this once noble project probably was going to serve. And it'll certainly, it's not like it's going to go somewhere and go to nothing. It'll go to Cawcaw and expand that wonderful entity as well. So that's where I stand. Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I thought that at one point in that discussion that we, particularly once we stood up our housing department, community services department over there, that there was a component that would address minority businesses and or businesses that would help develop capacity or grow them in the sense of business plans or helping establish realistic budgets and that sort of thing. Whatever happened to that component of what we were trying to do? Am I making sense? Was that never a component of something that you all were?
Are you talking about our SBE program? That I know there was a point in time we were working with procurement on that because they certainly work with small businesses.
No, so this is when Mr. Davis was here and we allocated all of these ARPA funds, particularly not only for Housing Our Future and contemplating, the.
Are you talking about, so the original proposal that we made to you probably a year and a half or 2 years ago for the small business program was modified by council. There was a memo that it was adjusted to go along with the yellow sheet that changed what we were doing with the small business program.
That change.
I thought it was nonprofit.
Yeah.
Right, but not only the monetary assistance, we also talked about building capacity among them, bringing them in, workshopping certain things, providing them with, for lack of a better word, infrastructure that enables them to really plan their own opportunities for growth.
We'll go back and check. I'm pretty sure that was the first proposal that we made to you on a yellow sheet.
So that went away.
And then we came back with a modified because staff asked us to change the way we were going to do that program. So we came back with a modification, but we'll verify all those.
I remember sending her, to Mr. Davis that very night to make certain that we made those connections so that, organizations like this one, particularly in a funding desert or not really knowing specifically how to go after, major dollars, matching funds, whatever the case is, just building their own internal capacity. They have great lofty ambition, wonderful goals, but may need that piece that would help them develop at least the budgetary means, to make their projects work. And I thought that we discussed that night, and I really thought that from that day we would send not only this particular organization, but we would work with other organizations even like it to help.
I'm wondering if you're talking about the contract we had with SCASID, the South Carolina Community Economic
All
Development.
that money was given to do, and I remember Bernie Mazik standing up in the audience. I remember Phyllis Martin. At the time, she was working with Tri-County. So all of those types of initiatives were also supposed to come out of this. So what happened?
I can take those in pieces and give you an update. The Phyllis Martin Tri-County Cradle to Career contract, council awarded a couple of months ago now. And Ms. Smalls and their staff are working on that data collaborative. So they have regular, I think about every couple weekly meetings on that. So that's going forward. The SCASID contract was executed. Procurement helped us with that, and that was done. They were paid for the work that they did for us, for the communities and the organizations. But I'm going to have to go back and check. I know that what you're talking about, we originally had in the yellow sheet for what we were going to do with small businesses. And then council asked us to go back and change that because there were things like forgivable liens or something, or on the no?
But that was
no.
not all of it. We also talked about capacity building for those
So-
organizations. So that has nothing to do about forgivable nothing. It has,
So nonprofit capacity building, yes, yes.
where are we with that? Because this is one of those very organizations, I remember that night specifically asking that we try to prop them up.
Mr. Middleton, we are working with TCC currently. We meet with them weekly, and it'll probably take a couple of months while we collect data. After that, we will begin developing programs to build capacity for the nonprofits. We aren't quite there yet, but yes, sir, we are working on it.
But what I would add to Ms. Small's statement is they are also doing nonprofit capacity building, which they've been working on for the housing rehabilitation. You'll remember, separate from the TCC contract, the $3 million that you all set aside, you did a whole arm of capacity building for nonprofits, and I think you brought 7 new organizations to the table through that expansion. Is that right, Gail? Yeah. How many you brought new for your phase, your capacity building? 5, she thinks 5 new organizations.
Of them that we were working with.
It was nonprofits that were working on the critical home repair projects.
Critical
Yes, sir.
home repair. I got you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Pryor?
I just want to say, it seems like to me, she's been trying to work with the town of Ravenel for many, many years, but it seems that Ravenel wasn't receptive. And so what better way is to steal the idea and then fund it with taxpayers' dollars. That's basically what's happening here. She had an idea. They, didn't want to work with her, I guess, and they, I guess, wanted to starve her out, and I guess they've been successful in doing that. But now they're going to turn around, Joe said, 3,000 to 4,000 more houses and maybe an additional 4. And so what they're basically going to do is take the idea she had and fund it with taxpayers' dollars. And that's the way I see it. I may be wrong. I might be looking through a half-empty glass, but that's basically what's happening. They're going to take her idea, and they're going to do everything she was going to do, but they're going to fund it with taxpayers' dollars so they won't have to go out and raise the funding. And so to me, I don't know what the rush is. I mean, PRC is not knocking down our doors saying we need this. We're asking them to take this. And so how long is it going to be before PRC develops? Can anybody tell me that? How long is it going to be before PRC says, I'm going to take this property and do something with it?
I think Mr. Davis may have it.
Councilman Pryor, it's not in their 5-year plan. They have no immediate plans to develop that site.
Okay, so it's not in their 5-year plan. It's just going to be sitting there for another 5 years. So, I mean, what's the risk of saying, okay, let's wait till this session, and then if she doesn't get the funding, move on? Because PRC is not breaking down the door. Remember, we asked PRC to take on this project, but looking through a half-empty glass, it seems like to me, Ravenel is going to benefit because they won't have any competition. They're going to use taxpayers' dollars to develop this, and I guarantee you it's going to only be for probably certain subdivisions, or you got to be within that subdivision. Now, they may tell you that now, but if you don't get it in writing, that's the key. And so, I mean, everybody can do a handshake deal, is no good anymore. It has to be in writing. So, if this council is going to move forward in a different direction, I would ask that you get that in writing from the town of Ravenel, that everybody is going, from across, in these areas that you said, Joe, would have access without having to pay for it.
Mr. Boykin.
Mr. Darby, I guess I'm looking at a means to an end in this thing so it doesn't go on indefinitely. I would be willing to support your motion if you would add to it that after this 1 year from now, that this full legislative session goes through, that we will end this. In other words, give her the whole year, let the whole legislature have an opportunity to get her the funding. But at that time, we don't vote on this again, and if it isn't done, then it lapses. Would you be open to that, sir?
I could not ask for more of a honorable compromise, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So is the motion amended?
Would you accept the amendment?
Yes.
For the second?
Yes, I accept that
And
amendment.
just, well, and I just want the party to know that we have gone the extra mile. And once I give my word, 99.99% of the time, I'm going to keep it. So that's no offense, but that's it.
Ms. Ham?
You know I love you. Ms. Austin, I love you. You know, but that's it. That's it.
Ms. Ham?
So apparently, the way that the Greenbelt contract is set up, the applicant is currently out of compliance. All that I would suggest is that Mr. Darby also amend to include that the applicant sign a new amendment to the contract to allow for this extension so that Mr. Davis can work within the confines of the contract and they are not out of compliance.
More than fair.
So,
No more
Mr. Darby, you accept that amendment as well?
Absolutely, ma'am.
In the second? And I'm just going to restate, so the motion on the floor is a 1 year till the end of this legislative session next year, 1 year extension to get the funding needed, with also the condition that, Ms. Alston, you will work with our team to re-execute an agreement so that you're in compliance and can work with our Greenbelt on this project. Is that fair to everyone? Mr. Moody?
Sorry.
Does compliance, Ms. Ham, include paying any back interest or fees that the county has expended on behalf of this person? I would think it would. Sir, you've had a chance to speak.
I don't have the agreement in front of me. I would presume that if there were taxes owed while being owned by the applicant, that will be the taxpayer's responsibility or the owner's responsibility. But without having the contract in front of me, I cannot answer your question, Mr. Moody.
And Mr. Boykin?
Just for a point of clarification, I'm fine either way. Are we going to say that September 12th, 2024 is that 1 year period?
Right.
To afford her the ability to have the summer as some extra months? Okay, thanks.
And at that time, if the funding is not received, then it's automatically, title goes to the PRC. Is everyone clear on that?
Doesn't come back to council. That's what
Does
you're
not
saying.
come back.
Okay. Thank you.
Give them time.
Mr. Boykin, motion was, amendment was, and we accepted that amendment. It automatically goes to PRC.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can have it back.
I did not vote. I've recused myself from that vote from a previous appraisal we did before I was on council for this piece of property, which was about 13 or 14 years ago. So, thank you. We will reconvene. Oh, okay, we are reconvened. Excuse me. Third reading ordinances, multi-county park amendments.
An ordinance to provide for the reimbursement of allocations of revenue under the Agreement for Development of a Joint County Industrial Park by and between Charleston County, South Carolina, Colleton County, South Carolina, providing for the development of a jointly owned and operated industrial business park with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton? Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Wormer?
Aye.
Mr. Sapp?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Number 6A, reading ordinances 2938 and 2932 North Highway 17.
An ordinance amending the Charleston County Comprehensive Plan Map 3.1.9 Mount Pleasant Overlay Zoning District to amend the zoning and future land use designation for the real properties located at 2938 and 2932 North Highway 17, parcel identification numbers 580-0000-007 and 580-0000-0008 from light commercial designation to commercial designation. Mr. Boykin? Aye. Mr. Darby?
Nay.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor? No. Mr. Worman?
No.
Mr. Sass?
Nay.
The ordinance fails second reading with 3 ayes and 5 nays. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202 as amended, Chapter 5 overlay and special purpose zoning districts, map 5.4 and 5.4A, designation for the real property located at 2938 and 2932 North Highway 17, parcel identification numbers 58000000007 and 58000000008 from light commercial designation to commercial designation. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Nay.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski is absent. Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
No.
Mr. Werman?
No.
Mr. Sass?
Nay.
The ordinance fails second reading with 3 ayes and 5 nays and 1 absent.
Number 6C, City of Folly Beach Transfer of Election Authority, ordinance second reading.
An ordinance approving and accepting the complete transfer of authority to conduct municipal elections for the City of Folly Beach to the Board of Elections of Voter Registration of Charleston County. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor? Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Number 6D, Financial Incentives for Dogwood Properties, South Carolina.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among MD3PL South Carolina LLC, Dogwood Propco SC4 LP, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies and providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Number 6E, Financial Incentives for Dogwood Properties, South Carolina, ordinance second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among Bentelli LLC, Dogwood Propco SC4 LP, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies and providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor? Mr. Werman? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Number 6F, Financial Incentives for Dogwood Properties, LLP Building 3, ordinance second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among Cosmos Granite Charleston LLC, LCG Logistics LLC, Defense Engineering Services LLC, Dogwood Propco SC4 LP, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies, providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Number 6G, Financial Incentives for Dogwood Properties, South Carolina, LLP Building 4, ordinance second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among Wise Logistics Incorporated, Dogwood Propco SC4 LP, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies and providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
move
sir.
for approval on 7A and B.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Any discussion or questions? Bless you. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. 8, consent
I
agenda.
have 2 ordinances to read on that
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, 2 ordinances.
Yes,
Sorry.
sir. An ordinance authorizing the approval of Lados Incorporated as sponsor affiliate under the fee in lieu of tax agreement between Charleston County, South Carolina, and Sun Life Assurance Company of Canada, originally dated October 27, 2015, as amended and assigned, authorizing the authorizing the extension of the term thereof, authorizing the issuance of certain special source revenue credits thereunder, and other matters related thereto, and an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of real property totaling approximately .09 acres located at 1153 Bexley Street, parcel identification 47007000248 to Crew Properties LLC.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval A through G.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Moody.
Boykin.
Boykin? Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. Number 9.
9A, move for committee recommendation along with B through G.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Middleton.
Well, committee recommendation was to explore
Instruct staff.
and then bring it back direct, so we have to do it because it came out of committee.
And they would give us some options.
Come back,
Right.
with an option, but we have to vote on it to direct them to do it.
Okay. Talking about number 9A, parental leave.
A through G, I move for approval.
Okay, it was moved for 9A and for B through G as well?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about 9. I think there's some questions about 9A. Mr. Moody?
Yeah, as support, as I said last time, I would like to remind staff that what I'd like to see is a budget with assumptions about how we're going to pay for this. If this includes across the board benefit cuts, maybe we need to poll our employees to see what they think about this. That might be interested to hear what they've got to say. So those are the things I'm going to be looking for, is how do we pay for this? This is a small benefit for very few that a lot of people are going to not going to be able to take advantage of. So again, I'm going to reiterate that I think this council is being a little nitpicky when it comes to choosing about equity. But let's see what staff says.
May I add just that? Sure. Could we have a definition of parental leave in terms of specificity? Because it's so broad, I don't know what that really means.
Staff and HR got to bring back something. I think it's being driven about maternity and paternity leave, I think, is what's driving this discussion. Okay. But my problem is, what do we do with the person that needs to leave to take care of a sick parent?
Right.
They've got to use leave time, and where somebody else can take advantage of this. So I think it's unfair and inequitable to probably 90 to 95% of our employees, for the sake of 5 to 10% of our employees. So I would say that. But I did have a question for Mr. Tootin for 9C through E. I love these programs. I'm going to support these. Ms. Durant said something tonight that kind of reminded me of a concern I raised the other night about forgivable loans. And I would like to ask staff, Mr. Tootin, if you can bring back some information about forgivable loans. And where I'm going with this is trying to protect the federal taxpayer money. The federal taxpayer money, I think Mr. Pryor pointed out, can't be used to profit. So if we build a $4,000 ramp, who cares? I mean, that's great. We're not monitoring those, and I get that. But if we're spending $20,000 on a roof and floors, and another $20,000, we put $30,000 or $40,000 in somebody's house, we've got to ensure that money comes back into the county to go to another house, to go to another affordable house. The owner can't take that money, turn around, take federal money through us and turn around and make a profit based on the repairs we made. So I would like the staff to bring back, after this, something through planning and public works, obviously, for something for us to consider about a forgivable loan program. They stay in the house 40 years, it's gone. But they can't come in a year or two and get it all fixed up with federal money and our money, flip it and make a big number. We've got to stop. We can't let that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Pryor?
Legally, we might want to check and see if the feds would allow us to do that. If it was taxpayers' money from the county, I'd be all in. But we're using federal dollars that was given to us, and it was forgiven with no strings attached, it's paying it back. So how could we then say, okay, we're going to put a lien on your house when it didn't even cost us anything? So I think we need to read the rules and regulations and make sure what we're doing is legal. But if it was county dollars, I'd say, hey, all in. But I don't want to get in trouble for them looking to see if we making a profit, even if we put it back into the housing off of money that was given us for free.
Mr. Pryor, my purpose would be to just make sure that any net proceeds were able to be used to put into additional
Yes, sir.
repairs and
And
renovations.
I-
If we can do that, I think legal would be a part of this discussion.
Right.
Absolutely agree.
Right.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so let's vote on 9A first, and then we'll vote on the others. Is that all right? Okay, let's vote on all of them, all right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
I have some ordinances to read here.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. An ordinance authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 1138 Oxbow Drive, totaling approximately 0.52 acres, parcel identification number 42802000090, to Palmetto Community Developers LLC. An ordinance authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 1535 Keswick Drive, totaling approximately 0.37 acres, parcel identification number 27907000083, to Sea Island Habitat for Humanity. And an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 2964 Marginal Drive, totaling approximately 0.37 acres, parcel identification number 30710000050, to Charleston Habitat for Humanity Incorporated. That's it.
Okay, thank you. We do have a litigation matter for executive session. Do I hear a motion that we go into Ms., do you want to tell us what it's about?
Well, it is a litigation matter, one which we've discussed previously, but council requested an update.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, move for executive session.
Moved by Mr. Boykin, seconded by Mr. Moody. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
What's the update?
If we're talking about that, there's no reason for staff to stay.
There is no reason. You guys can all go. Excuse me, we are back from executive session. No votes were taken, and we have received legal advice from our attorney. I think that since there's nobody here, I think we'll forego council comments tonight.
No, sir, I have to say something, sir. And not to detract from your leadership, sir, but I really like the femininity that Ms. Honeycutt presents when she runs the meeting, sir. No harm, sir.
I don't
Just
doubt
want you
that.
to know, sir, that's all.
I like the way she runs the meeting, too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all very much. So hearing no comments, we will adjourn. Thank you.
All right. Oh, gosh.
All I want to know is who's checking the checkers.
So come over with it.
That's going to be as good as that whole.